This podcast is brought to you by Penji. Penji is a creative subscription service that gives you access to pre-vetted, agency-trained creatives from all over the world. From graphic design to illustrations to social media management and web development, it's all included for one monthly price. It's time to say goodbye to the hassle of searching for top-notch creative talent. With Penji, you get quality and consistency delivered right to your inbox every day, carefully crafted for you by humans. So meet your new creative team today. Head over to penji.co for more and enter the coupon code located within the podcast show notes.
Okay, hello everybody. Welcome to the Fully Managed Podcast. You know what this podcast is about. We talk about business, we talk about marketing, and we give you guys tips to assist you in your business journeys. I'm your host, Daniela, and I'm Penji's Partnership Coordinator. And I'm very happy because today we have a really cool guest, Igor Avidon. Hi, Igor. How are you doing? He is the founder and the CEO of Avidon Marketing Group. Hi, Igor. So
Hi,
excited to have
Danielle.
you today.
Yeah, very excited to be here.
I'm so excited today to get the ball rolling, break the ice a little bit. I have a little game prepared. I always have games for my guests, and today, what I have for you is a would you rather. So, I'm just gonna give you some prompts and tell me which one would you rather do. Okay?
Sure.
You can only use memes to communicate for 1 year, or every time you text someone, it autocorrects it into a dad joke.
The memes for sure.
Yeah, the memes. You're stuck in a group chat with 100 Elon Musks, or every device you own constantly auto plays Crypto Bros YouTube ads.
Oh my God. I'll take the Musk's.
The Musks. Okay. You can teleport anywhere, but only to IKEA locations. So you can technically go to like Switzerland, but the IKEA is there. Or you can fly, but only 1 inch off of the ground.
Wow. Teleporting is probably much better.
Yeah. Next question is, oh my gosh, here we go. Last one. Every time someone says blockchain, you have to do 5 push-ups or wear Crocs to every meeting for a year.
I'll do the push-ups.
Yeah, I like that. I feel like it makes a lot more sense than I feel like people don't say blockchain as much.
Yeah, I mean, it's any extra exercise and, at my age is welcome. So, if it's something that makes me do that, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, I agree. Exercise is always welcome. Well, thank you, Igor. That was great. We already got to know your preferences a little bit, but to talk a little bit more about your business, about marketing, can you tell us about yourself, what you do, favorite color, the whole shebang, what we got to know?
Sure. So we are a SEO and content marketing agency. We've been in business since 2017, officially since 2018, but the beginnings were, the foundation was laid in 2017. We're an end provider. It is our flagship service and is the only service that we offer. And we are very good at it. And we are very, highly adept at search engine optimization.
Cool. Yeah. Actually, that's one of the topics that we had for today, which is on search engine optimization. And I think a really hot topic amongst people in the SEO world right now is AI. AI is really it's obviously affected every industry, but I think it's affected the marketing industry, specifically that SEO branch, very much because users, right, the netizens, they're interacting with the internet in a very different way now that AI is sort of coming into play. Um, I think it kind of like got introduced a little bit more with ChatGPT and things like Siri and Alexa, but I think now it's just kind of like going more and more into full-fledged. Um, for someone who is, like doing so much SEO, how do you think that affects how a business should be approaching doing that SEO approach? I guess is my question.
That's a fantastic question, actually. So that's something that we have been working with, We're trying to figure out how to actually get our clients into these AI search results. So there's even, at this point, there are abbreviations like GEO, which is generative engine optimization. So basically trying to get, your brand name or your product or service to be highlighted in these ChatGPT and Gemini search results and answers. And so we've actually been closely examining that and monitoring it since last year. And over the last, I would say, 9 months, we've actually done a really good job of streamlining our internal processes to meet both the SEO and that AI search answer demand. Um, and there's a lot of overlap, to be completely honest. I think that a lot of what we already do kind of naturally lends itself to allow brands to become visible in search results within AI tools. So, for example, you kind of have to understand how AI works, right? It works on data sets and it essentially just gathers as much information off, from every corner of the web to give users their best options, the best answer. And so oftentimes when there are, commercial queries like, how do I find the best software for HR, right? Something like that. In order to be included as one of the solutions there, you actually have to do a lot of the same things that you would do for a kind of a digital PR slash content marketing slash SEO campaign in house. And so a lot of what we already do is actually, geared towards that. And there's so much overlap that we are naturally kind of transitioning into offering that as part of the service. And sure enough, kind of the startups that are popping up right now, a lot of them are obviously forward thinking, and a lot of them want that kind of a service. And even like e-commerce sites are also starting to think about this. How do we get our name into those search results? So there's definitely an impact. I do still think that it's important to note that AI search results are going to be still very limited in terms of the amount of traffic that a brand will get from those search results. But on a brand awareness, kind of from a brand awareness perspective, I do think it's important to start accommodating and start, thinking about how do I get in there for Gemini, for ChatGPT to mention me as as an important product or service provider.
Do you think that with Gemini, ChatGPT, I'm assuming more of these are going to be kind of coming up. I know there's one Roku, the one on X. I don't remember what the AI one is for X, but I know that they have one. Um, uh, do you think that it's going to eventually lead to having to create different strategies for different platforms? So I would ask like, like what someone inputs into ChatGPT might be different than what they're putting into Gemini and then what they're putting into that X one. Do you think that you're gonna like as a business, are we going to have to start to try to streamline into these different sort of platforms?
I think yes and no, right? So even right now, for kind of historically for SEO, for example, most people will optimize for Google, right? But there are still other search engines, right? Like Yahoo, Bing, DuckDuckGo, etc. And all of them have their own proprietary algorithms. And there are similarities. I think that there are a lot of similar factors that impact how well you rank there, but they might be weighed differently, right? So links might be more important on Yahoo, whereas on-page optimization and user behavior metrics might be more important on, for Google, right? So I think that a similar thing will happen with these AI searches. People will interact differently, So for example, like voice searches are going to be a lot more conversational, right? So how do I do something, right? Or tell me the best brand of clothing that is ethically sourced, right? So so there are just all of these different variables that are going to dictate how each AI platform is being interacted with, and that's going to dictate a lot of how people are going to try to optimize for that. Now, because it's so new, it's very difficult to say exactly
Yeah.
how it's going to be done. We have little to no insights. There's like no data, right? Like for Google, we have Google Search Console, we have Google Analytics. There are third party tools that offer us insights into how people search. Whereas with ChatGPT and Gemini and all of them, there isn't really a good data set that we can tap into to discover that and learn. So that's again that just speaks to the how early this technology is hitting us. But I think that with time, we're going to figure some of these things out. And that we are actually on our end studying how, specifically how ChatGPT and Gemini behave in terms of how they, how they provide answers and how they generate it. And, one of the simplest way to do it is to literally ask it, what made you give us that answer, right? So that's a nice thing is that you can literally ask it and, hope and pray that that's the honest answer.
Yeah, no. I think what's interesting to me is just how much it's going, how it's moving so fast, right? I think a lot of people when it comes to AI are very skeptical because they feel like it's like, oh, it's like robots taking over Terminator, or because they're like offended that it's especially creative artists. I think I've seen a lot of people sort of have that complaint of it being, like stealing their work and all of this effort and demotivating in a lot of ways. Um, but I think like just don't see it sort of going away. And so I think the best thing that we can do is sort of try to adapt to it and work around it instead of rejecting it because I feel like it's at a point where it's also growing at a really fast right. And even though I feel like you still see some kind of weird glitches within AI services, it's only going to get better. Right. Which actually leads me to the question that I had for you regarding SEO, which is like, I think a big thing that we have heard about SEO is content is key, right? You want to have content so that you can rank really high on search. You can have like be the first one in search results of like, I don't know, cookie places in my area, and then that cookie shop is should just be, like, right up there, right?
Right.
Um, I think with the introduction of AI, that sort of focus is a little bit different. I think people because, like, if you're looking for a cookie shop, I think there comes in my opinion, sort of like the behavior of the user is also very different than what it was, before, right? People are not really scrolling through links as much as they're just like taking that one answer that they get on the top as at face value. Some people are using ChatGPT as the new search engine, etc. Um, for businesses who have sort of always been doing that model of creating a bunch of content, having like, words to rank higher on search, uh, do you think that that is still a method that is worth pursuing? Do you think it's going outdated and it's good to sort of continue to ride that wave of trying to find something new? Or do you think that a combination of both is what is going to be happening?
Well, I do think it's important to have both. So remember that content is ultimately what creates a larger presence for you, right? So, for example, if you have let's say you're an e-commerce store and you sell, again, let's say you sell, Christmas sweaters, right? You're gonna want to be present, right? So you could take just the commercial intent keywords like, buy Christmas sweaters, right? Or Christmas sweaters online or cheap Christmas sweaters, something like that. But those are just your commercial keywords, right? So how do you expand your reach, right? So for example, Christmas party ideas, right? Like, or, office Christmas party ideas. That's the kind of content that's going to be, if you can rank for a query like that, for a topic like that, then you're going to kind of expand your like a kind of cast like a wider net, right? So your reach is going to be far, far more significant. I do think that it works the same way with AI search, right? Because again, if somebody's looking for ideas on, um, like ugly Christmas sweater office
Yeah.
party ideas, something like that, like, or they want to create their own sweater, right? Again, that influence comes from somewhere, right? And so sometimes ChatGPT and Gemini will actually include will include certain websites or brands, or maybe even reference certain, articles where it's pulling that information from. Now, that's a little bit optimistic thinking. I don't know if that's going to be the case, if they're continually going to offer up their sources. But users, if they ask for a source, right? If they're like, "Hey, give me a good article about, how to, knit my own sweater," that with step-by-step instructions and pictures, right? Then ChatGPT will actually be forced to give them something. And then if you rank well, if your article has good visibility, then you automatically become, you could become, one of the articles that's actually pitched to the users, right? So there is a significant amount of overlap. Again, I think that in many ways, AI and AI search and SEO, like traditional Google SEO, I think there's a lot of overlap there, and strategies to get visibilities for brands overlap heavily. I just don't think people really realize that because they don't know how it works oftentimes, right? So it does take some education, but overall, it's absolutely worth to keep an eye on AI search results because guess what? Those are new opportunities, right? And I think that that's the way that you have to look at it is yes, it's small. I think it's only like 0.1% of all referral traffic, not even other channels, right? Not organic, not direct traffic, but referral traffic is coming from ChatGPT and Gemini. So that's a very insignificant amount, but at the same time, that's rapidly growing. And I do think it's here to stay. I don't think that people can discount these AI searches because I think that Gen Z and Gen Alpha and on are going to continue to use this. I do think that there's room for both. Some people, millennials and older generations will continue to use Google primarily, in my opinion, whereas Gen Z and Gen Alpha will start to use kind of more of this generative answers.
Yeah, I think it's definitely going to change was what like as generations sort of grow. I've also seen that Gen Z uses a lot of social media platforms as search engines, which I think is really interesting. Um, I heard someone kind of talking to me about content marketing and how like if you want to target Gen Z, you have to be on like TikTok and Instagram and like the sort of trendy social media platforms. But I was thinking but Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they're gonna grow up, right? They're gonna be 30, 40, whatever adult age you want them to be. And so at one point, that platform that you are thinking as like the young people audience one is going to be for those 30-year-old Gen Z who are on TikTok, and so forth. Or actually, I don't know, because like since they grow up with technology, it's a very different than from like millennials who I think sort of tend to stay in their own lane. But I have seen sort of that big change kind of coming in. I also have noticed that a lot of businesses were kind of resisted because of budgeting. I think what when a business has a low budget, it can be a little bit difficult to sort of figure out what they're cutting out of a marketing strategy, right? Um,
Mhm.
when you were talking to someone who has budgetary restraints, do you think that SEO and all of these things that are happening with AI should be something that they should still want to put some or allocate some funds into, or it's something that maybe like they can sort of put to the side for when the business has gotten a little bit bigger and they can target these other types of people it at a future date, or do you think that SEO is one of the things that a business should prioritize from the get?
So obviously, I will tend to have a more biased view on this. I do think that the organic channel and SEO are critical for a business, to do well. At the same time, I'm also a huge advocate for people not jumping into SEO without having a healthy budget first. So, in my opinion, SEO or the organic channel, they're kind of a supplementary channel in order to accommodate larger brand growth, right? So you have to have a profitable business in order to fund SEO. That's my stance. That's the way that I always, whenever speaking to prospects, if it's a smaller e-commerce shop, that cannot afford the monthly SEO services and they're thinking about going into debt for it, I always advise them against it because frankly, it just takes time. It's not it's a very slow growing channel that, can take anywhere between 9 to 12 months before you start seeing those returns really. And obviously whenever you're thinking about SEO, you're thinking, 3, 4, 5 years out, right? So that's ultimately what the mindset should be for these business owners. Now, you know, that also means that yes, they're going to have to figure out how to get that initial traction, right? Whether it's paid search advertising, whether it's, social media advertising and, influencer advertising, whatever it might take, that's what they should do. But ultimately it starts in-house. And actually the biggest piece of advice that I give to every prospect to whom I say, don't invest in SEO right now is to learn the basics of SEO and at least accommodate some of the basics so that they at least understand, when they're looking for professional SEO help, that they know what to look for, right? They know the difference between a good link and a bad link. They know the difference between great content and really poor quality content that was, generated by AI or written somewhere, offshore. So there are things that you should know about SEO on your own before you kind of dive into it in order to be a, a properly educated client and get the most out of it.
Yeah, I feel like if that's really important. At Penji, we do graphic design, and one of the services that we do is UX UI. And that's like a big thing where I think we also sort of stress that, you have to be an educated client when you're going into web design because SEO plays a part into it. Right. You're making a website and that's going to be a part of the strategy. So you have to like very much understand a lot of it before you just kind of go in and say, I want a pink website to sell my shoes. Um, so I think that that's like a really important thing that always sort of comes up. Um, my other question for you was regarding content, actually. Um, I think a lot of these sort of like when a business is getting started, when the budget is limited, aside from whether or not they put money into SEO, I think a lot of the concerns that I see are um, not having bandwidth to create content tailored for every single group that they are targeting. Um, obviously, like a one size fits all type of thing doesn't really go. And I think it's like very logical, and a lot of people know this, but unfortunately, a lot of people say like, "Well, I don't have money to do anything other than a one size fits approach." So, what can they do to kind of work around that if they are trying to sort of tap into that part of creating content, like doing all of this SEO work, but they probably only have for like one specific thing that they can do.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. You just take, you don't need a pie starting, from every edge, right? And you don't try to eat all of it at once. You just take a slice, right? And you work on that slice, and then you come back to that pie and you eat the rest of it until it's done. So, ultimately, I think that you just strategically you pick what kind of content, who you're trying to market to, who do you really want to capture, what is your lowest hanging fruit opportunity, and then go after that, whether it's targeting a particular audience, whether it's going after a particular channel. That's just a smart way to approach your, business development and marketing. And, ultimately there is no one size fits all approach, but at the same time, you can make impactful gains when you take it, one step at a time, right? And so I think that even if you can produce one article every month, right, or if you can allocate, a couple of $1,000s worth of advertising into a single month to, target your, highest, you know, kind of highest profit margin product, right, something along those lines, just do some things, take it a little bit at a time. And no matter where your budget is, ultimately, I do think that there are successful ways to, to market and develop your business and build your brand, even if you just commit, as little as an hour, a day to it or an hour every week to it.
Yeah, for sure. I think like anything I think is good, even if it's just a little, as long as you're doing it. I think it's worse to do nothing and kind of just staying within that, I don't know, mindset. Um, do you think that content is something that is easy for any business owner to create now that ChatGPT is a thing and you can literally put in a request of like, hey, come up with ideas that I can post for my business? Or do you think that it's still something that you should sort of, collaborate with other people with?
So this is actually where AI is going to potentially harm businesses, in my opinion. So AI generated content is not great because it literally takes the again, existing data sets, right? Existing content that somebody else put together, and it kind of, produces an answer based on that, which is not original. It's not unique. It's not expertise driven, right? And ultimately, great content is going to come from people who are in the thick of their industry, right? Because they're going to have the thought leadership. They're going to have the expertise, the experience that comes with everything,
Yeah.
within the industry, right? And so ultimately, I think that and unfortunately, not everybody is kind of educated on this side of things, but Google, for example, doesn't want to see AI generated content. In fact, they just come out and said, like, don't use ChatGPT to write content and then publish it. We just had a core algorithm update that literally probably targeted a lot of that, thin content or content that is not originally unique. We've also had the kind of the EAT side of things, which is experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness, which basically is it's the importance of authorship, right? So are you somebody whoever you are and you're writing an article, are you an actual expert in that subject matter? If you are not, then Google is probably not going to rank your article for it. So this is something, that's been around for, several years now, and we've been accommodating that within our content processes. But that's why we pull in our clients oftentimes. That's why there's review and there's oftentimes collaboration with the clients, because when we put together content, we're not the experts on the subject matter. They are, right? And so oftentimes they will actually provide the kind of the unique angles, the unique data sets or unique quotes that really support the meat of the article and provide those unique viewpoints. So yeah, I mean, please don't use ChatGPT to generate content. I beg everybody, please, if you cannot, if you don't have time to do it, then do it yourself. Take an hour on the weekend, write an article, and just put your best foot forward, right? Just write about that topic and cover it as a true expert. And I promise you that will work better for you than anything that ChatGPT will spit back out at your query.
I think ChatGPT is really helpful for getting rid of that sort of blank slate. If you know what I mean. Like I feel like I've had
Such a
ChatGPT.
point.
Yeah. Kind of like you're not staring at a white piece of paper and you're just like, what do I say? I think it can be helpful for like giving you ideas, get that sort of like that mind moving, get it flowing until you can come up with something. But I agree with you. I've seen a lot of businesses put out a lot of like articles and content and it's clearly AI generated. And it really turns me off because it's like you said, ChatGPT is pulling this information from somewhere. If you are not feeding information into an algorithm so that ChatGPT can pull it, it's gonna keep getting just worse and worse unless we make sentient bots, which I honestly don't want to get to. But that makes sense. Um, so I totally agree. Yeah, no. Um, a really niche subject is that a lot of people like I know that a lot of writers have complained about AI generated like creative writing, for like stories and stuff because a lot of people are starting to use that. Um and they've kind of complained that it's the same thing of like, well, like you can't do like a book. Don't write a book in AI. Like what is the worth of it if it's made in AI? And I think like I don't think it's like at least if you've ever tried to have sort of do an AI do that for you, you will notice that it will eventually start talking in circles and do like recurring patterns. So I don't think that it's even a feasible thing to do. So I think like yeah, you definitely still need to have someone in there to sort of get in and review and see and add the human aspect of it.
Yeah, I think that even if you look at like, manufacturing factories that, have like robotic arms building things, right? There are still human operators that are walking around and making sure that, the machinery itself works well, probably, and, probably programming some of those things, right? Today we're building this, tomorrow we're building that. They still have to input the programming, right? So like, yeah, it's an imperfect tool. I think it has its uses. We're actually exploring, how it can be used for certain things, but to purely use it as an actual writer, that's not a great idea.
Certainly helpful, like you said, but not a great idea for like permanent usage. And I think this is a great note to end the podcast on, Igor. It's been so great to have you. But before we end it, I do want to give you the space to promote anything, to plug anything. If anything we spoke about today resonated with our audience, anybody's looking for SEO work, or you're looking for people to work with you, space is yours.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we are highly competent at what we do. I personally take care of all the prospect, initial communications and after that. So if anybody has any questions or if you're curious about our services and would like to learn more, please just reach out on our website. That is, the contact forms on the website is the best way to get in touch with us, and I will be the person replying to.
Awesome. Yeah, I will be adding the links to that on the descriptions video so that anybody can go ahead and talk to you and see it. And thank you so much for being here, Igor. It was so great to have you on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Danielle. That was great.
It was great. Thank you.
You've been listening to Fully Managed, brought to you by Penji. Check out the show notes to learn more about today's guest, and to learn more about Penji, the human-first creative subscription service, head over to penji.co. And by the way, if you're still listening, it would mean the absolute world to us if you were to share this podcast with a friend and, of course, subscribe.